Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week, and at the end of the episode, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week, and you have a chance to be featured on the episode, so be sure to let me know your pick of the week for that chance. Now, let's jump into this week's comics. I actually had a pretty decent sized haul with 10 books, and number 10 for me was Red Goblin issue 2. I didn't love issue 1. I wanted to give it another shot because I'm interested to see where this Liz Allen story is going to go. I know she's got to be connected to what's going on with her son and kind of the Green Goblin stuff and even her husband. You know, she's been connected to the Spider Universe for a while. So I've always been curious, how can Liz Allen kind of step out of just your average supporting character, and it seems like they're leading there. So I was like, okay, let me continue this series to kind of see where that goes, and obviously that's not connected at all right now. And honestly, the reason I haven't been loving this is because of Normie's character. I feel like he just doesn't interest me very much. He's a younger character, so I feel like it's a little harder to write those type of characters in this kind of dark-ish world. And I just feel like he doesn't have much of a personality right now. So overall, and also the artwork, the faces look a little weird as well. So overall, giving that 2 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, which is Lazarus Planet, Revenge of the Gods. And I thought this issue had to do with Mary Marvel. I know there's supposed to be a part 2 to that original story, so I was like, well, let me pick this up, and I've been picking up all the other Lazarus Planet stories, but this is definitely more tied into and towards the Wonder Woman series. So if you've been following Wonder Woman, this is probably for you, but for me, someone who has not been reading Wonder Woman, really any of the titles, I just didn't really feel connected to this one. It's not really new reader friendly. Again, it's a short story to more propel what's going to happen next in Wonder Woman without it really grabbing me, but I do feel like the artwork was really solid for this book. I still don't know how many issues are left of this Lazarus Planet thing, but it's mostly just, I feel like, buying time for this future dawn of DC. So that is number 9, and I gave that one 2 stars. And moving on to number 8, which is Harley Screws Up the DCU issue 1. I got this one on whim. I like a good comedy book here and there. I thought this could be really fun to see kind of different versions of Harley Quinn, or, you know, just how badly she could screw up the whole entire multiverse. And this is very much a setup issue. I have not been reading Harley Quinn in a while, so I don't know if it's attached to what's been going on there. But she's got a lot of friends, very similar to the Jimmy Palmiotti run from years and years ago. And she screws things up, and by the end of the issue, we get to see that she meets her future self or alternate universe self, and Harley's like, oh man, who are you? Copyright infringement. You know, I thought that, and I know exactly what this book's supposed to be. It's supposed to be very comedic and fun, and for me, the humor didn't quite hit for my sense of taste, but, you know, I think if you enjoyed that Jimmy Palmiotti run of Harley, or maybe if you're reading current Harley, you'll enjoy this one, but for me, it didn't really hit all the marks. But I like the art. I thought the art was really cartoony and fun, and I think really worked for this book. And again, the cliffhanger was somewhat interesting. So giving that 2 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to 7, which honestly it was a book I was really looking forward to, and a bit disappointed with this first issue, and that is No One, issue 1. This is a murder mystery suspect of, well, who is our vigilante? I wouldn't call him a hero, but who's our vigilante? And you introduce all the suspects, and there are a lot of suspects, which is kind of what took me out of this. They try to introduce way too much without really a focal point of, A, making us care who No One is, and making us care about any of the focal characters, and that really is what pulled me out. I thought the artwork was pretty good for the grittiness of it all, but also didn't really stand out to me, and I honestly didn't quite figure out that was going to be kind of the big story until the end. I was like, oh, okay, here's all these suspects. I guess that's kind of what we're leading towards. So overall, I think I had a lot of hype for it because of Radiant Black and how much I've been enjoying that. But this is very different from that, which obviously it should be. And I do like the idea of the podcast connection and the kind of the multimedia aspect you can have with a book like this, but it just didn't do it for me. I don't think I'm going to get issue 2, but glad I gave it a shot, and glad they're expanding the universe and really telling different types of stories. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Superman Lost, issue 1. A book I was interested in. I like Christopher Priest's writing. Also, I like seeing, I don't know if this is actually a Black Label, but seeing a miniseries that's kind of out of continuity, and it's not a Batman story, even though Batman's in this story, it is a Superman story. And this is a very exposition heavy issue where Superman and Lois they're tight, they're good. We see their relationship a bit, and then Superman leaves for 20 years, and Lois is like, I thought that was a day. What's going on? And then there's exposition about kind of what happened, and then obviously the mystery is like, okay, what happened between those 25 years? That's the story, which I thought is a really interesting plot. I think it set that story well. I just feel like a big chunk of the middle could have been better utilized. The artwork is pretty solid for it too. I believe it's the same artist who worked on Deathstroke, a series that I enjoyed. So overall, I think this one has potential. I don't think it blew me out of the water, but it gave me enough to want to check out issue 2. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Harrower, issue 2, and this is a slasher book. I believe it's only 4 issues, so it's a mini-series. I was more impressed with issue 1. I thought issue 1 set up the world a little bit better. This is definitely more of the action side of things, which, I don't mind. It is a slasher book, where you have the party, you kind of set the players a little bit there, and then the Harrower comes in and kills people. And that's really mostly the issue. But because it's such a tight 4 to 5 issue miniseries, I kind of wanted a little bit more to happen here, or even us to care about these characters a little bit more, for the deaths to matter a little more, like you would see in your standard slasher story, and maybe it relies a lot on issue 1 to do that, and maybe this book would work better in a trade for that. But I still am enjoying it, curious to see where the series will go and what makes it stand apart from other slasher stories. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 4. And that's at number 5, actually. Number 4 is Batgirls, issue 16, a book that is the title of this video, and a book that I was hearing a lot of, because it came out yesterday, I was hearing a lot of whispers about, and it's like, oh, this is going to change the girls forever, or they might be in a queer relationship, and I'm all for it. I love seeing queer representation in any mainstream comics. I think it'd be interesting to see what they do with Stephanie and Cassandra. I had only seen them as friends previously, but I would like to see if they build it into something else. And I thought this issue, I was actually a little surprised, because when I read it, I was like, oh, I didn't really get to see the queer aspect of it. I thought they just kind of played it as friends. Curious to see where it goes. I think that was kind of my nitpick of this issue in general. I think last arc did such a good job at kind of getting into the heads of Cassandra and Stephanie, but this kind of felt a little bit more surface level of things we've already explored with the characters. We get that they're good friends. I did like, Stephanie turning into this real bat character, and them having to save Stephanie, and I like seeing their friendship, but it did feel a bit like a filler issue to kind of get to the next part of whatever direction they're going to go with Batgirls. So overall, I gave it 3 stars. I had a fun time with it. I don't know if I saw the queer aspect that I was expecting to see, just because of I think I read an article about it, and then also some Twitter stuff I saw, but curious to see where it's going to end up going. So gave that 3 stars. Artwork is always fun for this one, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Justice Society of America, issue 3. I'm enjoying the ride for this. I think Janin does such a good job at creating such a crisp world visually. And then Jeff Johns obviously knows these characters really well, and we get to see a lot of story that probably previously has been told 20 years ago with JSA, and continuing that type of story. But keeping Huntress in the middle of it all. I think that's really a secret of doing an ensemble book like this, is always having some sort of focal point. That way you're not like, here's 10 characters, deal with that. It's like, okay, no, it's Huntress is kind of in the middle, she's the focal point, but then there's other characters involved, the rest of the JSA, that we could kind of learn about as the series goes on. And I like Huntress's voice in this. I like the plot that's going on about this villain that was in the past of JSA that's now in present time. Obviously, Huntress is also trying to save her mom, trying to save the JSA. It's a very clean-cut story that they definitely explain a lot in this issue. And I won't say it blew my mind in this issue. I think it was a necessary issue to kind of get plot points out. But interested to see where the ride's going to go. So giving that 3.5 stars. And that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is Gold Goblin, issue 5. This is the last issue of the series. It doesn't really tell you where the series is going to go after this, or the character is going to go. They're just like, read SpiderMan. You're like, okay, hopefully, we get to see the continuation of Norman's story here. But I liked it. I do think there were some slower parts here, some repetitiveness of, oh, my sins have been taken. This is what guilt feels like. But I really think it hammered it home with the cliffhanger, or I guess the ending of this series, where he ends up killing Queen Goblin. I was like, oh, that was an interesting twist I didn't see coming. It's a shame that we don't get to see more Queen Goblin. I think she had potential to be a really cool character, but I also think this was a better move to make Norman an interesting character. His sins have been washed away, but these new sins with this new Norman, is this gonna track him back to being Green Goblin? And I thought that was very fascinating. I think there's a lot of promise with the character with this issue, but the reason I couldn't go higher than 3.5 stars is that I don't know where I'm gonna get that promise. Will it be 20 issues from now with SpiderMan? If this was an ongoing book, I think this would have been a little higher, but just to end it here, I'm like, oh, I feel like this is just the start of his story. Like, I want to see more. And the artwork is just gritty enough for this one. I enjoy the style here. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, a book that I don't want to say I was pleasantly surprised by, because I was looking forward to it, but I didn't really know what I was expecting, and I got a lot more than I was expecting, and that's Hellcat issue 1. I really love this book, and if you think it's just going to be Iron Man light, it's not. Obviously, the Hellcat was in that series, and it's the same writer, but it's very much Patsy's story, and it opens up in such a cool way, where you get one page of, am I good? Am I bad? Let's jump into the story. And it really is this morally gray story about Patsy thinking that she might have murdered someone who was a nice guy, and also connected to her past with Hetty. Of course, you gotta have Hetty and a Patsy story. And then having her hell past also kind of come up, and really seeing why she is such a morally great character. Because when you think Patsy Walker, you think, okay, well, she was this romance character from decades ago. How could she be so dark? But if you know the character and how much she's gone through over the decades as a hero, or as maybe even an anti-hero, we really get to see that come to light. And I think this book has done a really good job at telling us previous stories, but kind of giving us emotion through it. It powers the story more than it being exposition saying, well, she's been in hell, let me tell you more about that. It's just like, the references honestly help to give us a good character-driven story, and feels necessary to the story for any new reader or older reader to read this. The artwork was really well done too. I like the darker palette. I just like the darker tone of this book. Again, Hellcat has definitely told darker stories, but this is the darkest story thus far, where you're questioning, did Hellcat kill a person? And she's even questioning herself, and there's some really interesting mythos stuff happening here too. Her mom's a ghost. It just, and I already know because of Twitter, but Christopher Cantwell, you could tell, is such a big Patsy fan, and this is his love letter to Patsy, and that's something I very much enjoy about this series thus far. And it's just a really well done first issue if you're a hardcore Patsy fan, if you never heard of the character, or you're just looking for a good murder mystery. So overall, giving that 4.5 stars, and that is my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below what were your favorite comics of the week. And last week's viewer pick of the week was Static Shock, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.